Hello, I'm Paul Rosa, and this is the Griffith Observatory located on top of Mount Hollywood in Los Angeles, California, where in a few moments we're going to speak with Jimmy Doohan. You know him as Scotty from Star Trek. He's going to tell us a little bit about his life before, during, and after Star Trek. We're also going to talk to some of the people here who make magic happen for the 2 million visitors that tour the Griffith Observatory every year. It's going to be a lot of fun, so stick around.
The first time I ever did a Scottish accent of all the shows that I've ever done was on one episode of Hazel, right? Never did a Scottish accent after that until Star Trek, right? But of course, when I auditioned for Star Trek, I did 8 different accents for them. And the reason that I auditioned is that I had auditioned for a show before, about 2 weeks before, and didn't get that job, but the director of that called me and said, Jimmy, would you come and do some accents for these Star Trek people? And I said, who are they? I had done a lot of science fiction before, you know, in different shows and so on. And so it was no big surprise for me. To me, to start out with, of course, it was just a job, you know, and hey, do the pilot, right? Well, strangely enough, after they sold the pilot, I got a letter from Gene Roddenberry saying, thanks very much, but we don't think we need an engineer. And I was really hit by that because, you know, I thought it was for sure I was going to get on a series or something, you know. And so anyway, I told my agent that. He said, he wrote a letter to you instead of to me? You know? I said, yeah. He says, I'll talk to you this afternoon. By 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I was back on the show.
So, Star Trek, when you got on the set, was it just another job?
Well, no, one of the reasons why it wasn't just another job is that the scripts were terrific. I mean, you know, really terrific scripts that were so well written and took advantage of it. And also, there was a moral to each one. And, hey, even today in Next Generation, they still try to put a moral in all the shows because I think that is really why Star Trek is famous.
Did you like being the engineer?
Oh, I really did, yes, yeah. Because to me, that's, I mean, people today, they say to me, wouldn't you ever want to be a captain? I said, heck no, I love being the engineer, you know, because even the engineering stories are terrific, and the things that the engineer has to overcome are terrific. And you know, of course, that I've been given an honorary degree in engineering, a doctorate in engineering from Milwaukee School of Engineering, which has been there since 1903. And the reason that I have that doctorate is because 50% of all the students who enter that School of Engineering all give the reason for becoming an engineer is Scotty.
That's quite a legacy.
You're darn right. It's fabulous.
Scotty can fix anything. What about James Doohan?
Jimmy Doohan could fix anything until computers came along. And I can't run a computer because I don't get a time to learn. But, I mean, I fixed everything there was. It was like, I can remember when I was about 13, my mother had one of these old easy washing machines, right? One day, I had nothing else to do. I just went down to the basement and took it apart. And she came downstairs with a whole bunch of blankets that she was going to wash. And she said, oh. She said, how long will it take to put it together again? I said, about an hour. It would only take me 20 minutes to do it, but it did take me an hour to put it back together again. I should have told her 10 hours, right?
What we're seeing here is a 12-inch Zeiss refracting telescope built in Germany in the early 1930s, specifically for Griffith Observatory. And this was built for the public to look through. It's been open almost every clear night since the building has been open, and probably more than 5 million people have looked through it. This telescope's open at night, every clear night from 7 on, and you can see the moon, the planet Saturn, sometimes the Orion Nebula, various star clusters, whatever our city sky allows us to see.
So what type of person comes here to the observatory?
Well, of course, we have people from all over the country and many different countries, actually all over the world, come here to look through the telescope. And I think what we provide that is unique to them is a chance to actually make real contact with the sky.
Tell me about the tracking part of it.
Okay, well, we have a motor in the base of the telescope that's quartz crystal controlled, and it's adjusted so that the speed that it drives the telescope matches the rotation of the Earth. In that way, stars don't drift out of the field of view as we're watching. Instead, the telescope slowly moves to keep pace with the motion of the stars caused by the turning Earth.
So you're pretty serious about astronomy. When did you get started?
Oh, I've been hooked ever since I was 4 years old when I first came here to Griffith Observatory.
Did Star Trek have something to do with you getting involved in all this?
Well, I've always been a fan of Star Trek, and I think actually imagining traveling from star to star is greatly, enhanced by Star Trek.
The gorgeous thing about conventions is that they just keep on going and going and getting bigger and getting better, and more cities are doing them and more fans are doing them. They are still the best.
What about the fans?
Well, the fans are they're just super fantastic, And the fan mail is terrific, but occasionally you get a fan letter that really strikes you, and I got one years ago from a young lady in the Midwest, and it was a suicide note. There's no doubt about it. It was a suicide note. And I went to a friend of mine who was finds people, right? And he's a famous bounty hunter. And I said, Ralph, he passed away now, but Steve McQueen did his last movie, which was called Hunter, and it was about my friend Ralph Thorson. I went to Ralph and I said, Ralph, with this information that you see on this envelope and everything else, I said, can you get me a telephone number? 6 minutes later, he called me and says, Jimmy, here's your telephone number. I said, wow. So I called her up. Thank God she was there. And I told her, I said, I'm going to be in Indianapolis in 2 weeks' time. I want to see you there. Okay? So she promised to be there. And she was there. And when I saw her, she was so down. You just couldn't believe it. It was but then I said to her, the next 2 weeks I'm going to be in St. Louis, and I want you to come there also. And she came to about 10 or 12 or maybe even 15 episodes, and I talked with her each time, and just just saying positive things and everything else. And then I mean, each time I know she really brightened up. Later on, I hadn't heard from her for years, and I had no idea what was happening. But she sent me a letter saying, I now have a master's degree in electronic engineering. Right? And about 6 years ago, one of the last times I was in Chicago, her stepmother came to me and thanked me for doing what I did, And I just said, wow, I'm just so delighted and so amazed that just by talking to someone, you can do that. I was born in 1920, March 3rd, and I was conceived in Ireland, of course, and then my family moved to Canada They arrived in Canada on New Year's Day in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and took the train ride 5,400 miles to Vancouver. And then I was born loving trains. I was nearly 6 years old, and we came across the Rockies, and we were going across Alberta, and the train stopped, and my father went up and talked to the conductor, and I guess asked him why is it we stopped, you know, and the conductor said so-and-so and so-and-so. My father says to us, my 2 older brothers, my sister, and I, come on. We went out, we walked along the side of the train, and we got up, and we were walking along the north side of the train, and we got up there, and this engine was just, you know, just panting away and everything else, but it was standing still completely, and we heard this noise, and it was something else. It grew and grew and grew and grew, and then all of a sudden, 3,000 head of buffalo crossed the tracks, heading north. Oh, I swear to you, you know, that was one of the greatest sights I have ever seen. When I was 19, the war started, and I joined up in the Royal Canadian Artillery as a gunner, private, and then I became a corporal and then a lance sergeant. I was sent over to England early. There wasn't much to do aboard the ship. There was maybe 8,000 troops, if not more, or maybe some less. 8,000 troops aboard this transport, and there's nothing else to do, so the crap game started, right? Dice are easy to carry, and so, you know, and I was very good in craps, because I would, in those days, I would, if I knew I was on a hot roll, I could just feel a flush coming to my face, you know, and it would get red, and I knew it, and I could feel it, and anything else. Well, the result of that, to cut a long story short, was that I cleaned out the whole ship. I had in my pockets 3,600 English pounds, which at that time was worth $4.40 per pound, so it's pretty close to $16,000, okay? And there I was all in my uniform. You know, if I had fallen into the water and drowned, it would have killed me. You know, so I landed, and we got in, we got the guns, and to cut a long story short, about 11:30 that night, and we had been warned to keep an eye out for German troops that we had overrun, because they might try to get back to their lines, you know, instead of being taken prisoner. Anyway, I was walking along with a fellow beside me, as close as that, named Tommy O'Brennan, and I was hit by about 8 machine gun bullets. Not about 8, a definite 8. You know? Well, when I got to Basingstoke over in England, the hospital, that next morning, they took out 4 bullets in the left knee. I had found that 3 bullets had hit this one finger. My sister-in-law came down from London to see me, and I was in pain, and I couldn't get rid of it. Okay, I actually, she was there about 5 minutes, and I really said to her, I said, Pat, gee, I'm sorry, but honey, I said, I'm just useless for you right now, you know, and I'm sorry you came all this way down, but you know, I just, it's hurting too much, you know, and everything else. And she was so sweet, and she said, okay, don't worry about it, and everything else. So she went back home, you know, and because she lived in London. And then I got so upset that I had, shall we say, chased her away, that I really started thinking about the pain, you know. And I did something that later on in life I learned how to do. But I did something then that I talked myself out of the pain. I talked to the pain, you know. And what I was doing is going into alpha and doing it. Oh, I didn't know that I was going into alpha, you know. But I swear to you, I never had any more pain after that. But I got back to the reinforcement depot, and I was looking for, they could send me anywhere they needed an artillery officer. And the first thing I noticed on the notice board was asking volunteers, artillery officers, to volunteer for air observation. I said, whoops, they're going to teach me to fly. And that's exactly what they did. Within 10 days, I was at Cambridge, England, at number 22 Elementary Flying Training School, and had my first flight in a Tiger Moth. And I swear to you, from if I had not been strapped in, you know, and I'd never been in the air before, who had, you know, 1/1000th of the world's population had been in an airplane before. And anyway, I'd have jumped out that first 150 feet, but as soon as the Earth stopped moving away, then I said, oh, wow, you know, this was something else, right? And I never had that feeling again, and I just absolutely adored flying. When I was when I first arrived there, and we were in the Mark III, this really kind of filthy instructor. It wasn't dirty, but he had a dirty mind, you know. And he'd say to me, he was English, and he'd just sit over across from me there and sing dirty songs while I was doing things, right? Then he'd say to me, he says, okay, now Doohan, he says, why don't you go out and do some low flying, you know? I said, fine, okay. So I went out solo, and I did some low flying, and I came back. He says, well, tell me what you did. And I said, well, I did so-and-so and so-and-so. What's the matter, Doohan? Are you a chicken? I said, will you send me out tomorrow? He said, certainly. I said, fine. Now, I went out the next day early in the morning, and there was an American convoy moving along the road. This is right near at Stonehenge, you know, Andover and then Stonehenge. And I had, first of all, completed about 4 left turns around Stonehenge, right, with my wingtip about 6 inches off the ground, right? And then I did right-hand turns with same thing and everything else. And then I saw this convoy coming along. And so it was coming this way. So I just went and touched my wheels in between each vehicle for about 15 vehicles, turned around, and then I did this between each vehicle with my wingtip about 6 inches off the road and everything else. I came back to him after I did some other things too, but I came back to him. He says, well, now, what did you do? And I told him, oh, you're no longer chicken, are you? Which I think that's kind of funny.
Now I'm talking with Patrick So, who is the astronomical lecturer here at the observatory. Does that mean that Tony sees it and then you tell about it?
Yeah, I basically give presentations in our planetarium theatre, mostly to school children.
Yeah, and I saw a lot of people having fun here too.
Oh yeah, they really have fun when they come up here. The excitement of seeing 4,500 stars in our planetarium theatre, and also was showing how the planets move against the background of stars. We can do this in accelerated time. We don't have to wait every day to watch the motion of the planets.
So have you done anything here with the space program?
In the early Gemini and Apollo missions, some of the astronauts came to the planetarium to actually train inside the planetarium theatre, learning some of the navigational stars. There was a special chair that they were suspended in just below the dome of the planetarium and above the planetarium projector, and they would spin them around, and they would quickly name the names of the navigational stars one by one as they spun around. It was just to get them orientated to what they would actually see from the spacecraft while they were in orbit above the Earth.
My goodness. What would you say to somebody who's thinking about going into astronomy?
Okay, the role that Griffith Observatory plays today is still important since the building was built. Basically, we're here to promote the science of astronomy and other related sciences. And when people come here, they learn a lot about the sciences. And many of the school children that come here to see our planetarium shows get fascinated in the science of astronomy. And later on in their lives, they may choose a career in astronomy or related sciences. So it's really a good start for them to come up here and watch the planetarium shows and see our exhibits.
So between Christmas of 45 and New Year's of 46, one Thursday night I happened to listen to a radio show on CBC, and I thought that was the worst radio show I had ever heard. I mean, it was just bad, you know, and I couldn't believe that they'd even put anything on the air like that. So I got my dander up, you know, and I got some stuff to prepare. I had Shakespeare and I had this and, you know, some... different books. And I went down to the local radio station, CFPL, and I walked in there and I said, could I make a recording? They said, oh, a transcription. I said, well, whatever you call it, you know, and everything else. I called them recordings. So anyway, I made one, listened to it, never heard my own voice before, and said to the operator, I said, oh, God, that's awful. Well, he says, I don't think so. He says, I think that's good. I said, oh, well, where do you go to learn? And he said, well, he says, a brochure from a school, a drama school in Toronto is opening up on Monday, just arrived today. And so I read it, sent them a telegram, got an answer about 2 hours later. By Sunday, I was in, I mean, this is all rush, rush, rush. I didn't even know what I was getting into. You know, I had no idea at all, you know, because here I was learning to, well, maybe to be an announcer on radio or something like that, you know. But then another step came along that I won the major scholarship from that school, which was 2 years at the Neighborhood Playhouse in New York City. Well, I mean, that was a heck of a step also, but I still didn't know I had any talent. Within about 5 weeks or less, this guy had given me, this Sanford Meisner, had given me such horizons to work for. And, I mean, the idea of, wow, this is how it's done, you know, and everything else. And even those first small steps were so terrific. And I have played thousands of roles, and I have never found him wrong yet. And, of course, I was wrong many times when I would be doing certain things, you know, and I had to take over the lead of this play because the other actor who was looked the part much better than me, and was a student, but he was a darn good actor also and is today, but he just wasn't getting it at that time, you know, so I had to take over the role. And I'm sitting beside Sandy, and he's saying to me about 4 o'clock one afternoon, he says, well, he says, you're going to have to take over this role. He says, because he says, we're only at the first act, and we're on next Friday or something like that, you know. And so I said, wow. And I went home. I came back the next morning with the prologue, first act, second act, learned, and so he started to direct me, and there was a soliloquy in the somewhere in the second act, you know, which, and I'm going on, oh God, I seem to see it all about me, the insects killing each other like humans do, you know, and I would go start through that, and I would hear back there, I don't believe you. I would start again, I don't believe you. I would start again. I don't believe you. And my Irish was getting up. And I said, okay, I'll start again. I don't believe you. Well, I mean, I got off. I jumped off the stage and went roaring up to him. He was sitting in the last row, which is only about 15 rows or less. But, and he just said, Jimmy, he says, just do what I've taught you and think of her. Just being killed. I said, oh, yeah. when it came to do the performances, I did what he told me to do, you know. When it came to do the performances, he just walked up and he said, and I knew it. I knew it. I could feel it. That I, you know, hey, there was all the truth in the world in what I had to say, and yet it was a play. The very first Tuesday of television in New York, 1948, right? I'm on television. I'm playing a detective in a show called Martin Caine, Private Eye, with William Gargan. You know, he's an old B-movie star, and terrific guy, you know, good actor, and everything else. Then I do about 55 more shows, and I'm off on summer stock most of those years. I've also returned once with my friend Leslie Nielsen to Canada to do radio during the summertime. And I stopped off the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation in the January 2nd of 53. And God, here was, I had 55 live shows to my credit. And I walk into their offices, and at 2 hours later, I walked out with 6 months' work. Whoa, boy, I tell you what, I dashed down to New York, dashed back up, you know, got myself a rooming house, and went to do a radio show that night, okay? Then I'm not there 2 weeks before I have a year and a half's work. You know, people want me for this and for that and for the other thing. And there was one experience with a show that I did in 1954, in April of 1954. It was called Flight into Danger. It was written by Arthur Haley, the famous writer. And he wrote all sorts of different things. And the first 4 shows that he did, I had the lead in 3 of them. But the show called Flight into Danger was then done as a movie with Dana Andrews and Linda Darnell called 0 Hour, and then it became some other title with terror in it, you know, with Doug McClure. And the final way they turned the whole dramatic script into a farce, and that's Aeroplane right now with Leslie Nielsen. Okay? Terrific, you know. And that is where he got his big start, a really big start, you know, because Leslie had done a lot of work before, and we're both really good buddies, you know, and because I have helped him and he has helped me in the early days and everything else, and it's just he's just a fabulous guy. All right, then I do countless. I do in Canada, nearly 400 live television shows. And of course, I'm also doing plays at this time, and I'm doing 4,000 radio shows, right? As a matter of fact, I got really started in radio in Canada, because I had done quite a few, but this, in the early days, in 1953, Essa Young was a Swedish fellow who's from Winnipeg, great character man. He was doing a United Nations show, and part of it was about Hitler. And he said to me, he said, "Can you do Hitler?" I mean, you know, he was saying, you know, geez, you know, we can just do any old thing if really, you know, but if you can do Hitler, that would be okay, you know. Well, I didn't. I just did an ordinary reading at first, and then in the dress rehearsal, I really let go, because I had imitated Hitler like you can't believe, you know. You know, all that sort of, and that way. And he just was, oh, that was marvelous to see the reaction of him, you know, when he just came out and he just hugged me. He says, oh boy, he said, that's the highlight of everything. And so, you know what? I never missed a show for him after that. I was cast in every show he did. Then I decided, boy, I had done just about everything there was to do. And I still had a lot of things to do in Toronto, and but some of them, the great majority of them, were tied to contracts. So what I would do is that I came into Hollywood. I stayed with Leslie for the first week or two, and the next thing was to I would have to go back every 2 months or so, and that's why I started to drive back, right? Because I wasn't making the kind of money in Hollywood in those days, because you know, it's kind of like, who are you? Even though I had film on me and everything else, and I had a terrific agent.
So now you're in Hollywood. You get called for this show, this audition for a show called Star Trek.
I just auditioned for an engineer, right? And I did about 7 or 8 different accents, and they asked me afterwards, Gene said, well, which accent do you like? Well, I said, if you want an engineer, I really think you should be a Scotsman. And he said, well, we rather like that one too. So that was the end of that, right? As a matter of fact, the Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, which I had already done 2 shows on, they asked me to sign a contract the same week as I signed with Star Trek, and I couldn't do it. They asked me to become the engineer on the submarine, and with no accent. And that maybe it would have been better for me at that time as an actor to take that job and say, you want to get rid of me in Star Trek, you know? But my agent wouldn't let me do it.
So did you ever get angry with Mr. Scott for typecasting you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I would get really upset, you know. And a great friend of mine, Charles Cavalieri, who was a great dentist, he said, Jimmy, he says, you are going to be Scotty long after you're dead. He says, so if I were you, he says, I would just go with it, you know. And since that, I saw the sense in that, and I've accepted it, you know, and learned to like it. And now, hey, I know very well that I'm one of the terrific characters that came out of Star Trek, and I made him, you know. So that's lovely for me.
You know, only in Hollywood would you have a bust of James Dean at an observatory. But there is some significance here. You see, James Dean and Natalie Wood were featured in the film A Rebel Without a Cause in 1955. Some of the key scenes were shot here at the Griffith Observatory. And what's kind of interesting is that A Rebel Without a Cause was the first film to feature the observatory as an observatory.
I did a film for NASA on the shuttle, which I would take around to the universities, and I became known as the greatest private promoter of NASA in the world. Yeah, that's the name they had for me, and they have that name for me down in Cape Canaveral also, you know, which was a very neat thing. It had some German narrators, but I was the main narrator that carried the story through, you know. And not only that, I gave it to NASA on the cheap, so that they didn't have to pay me big money.
Because you wanted.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, because I'm a NASA fan, and I wanted to go, and I'm really tired of them not doing anything. I know we need to cut back on this, that, and the other thing, but good gracious, I think in stopping the collider, they've cut back enough. You know, for God's sakes, don't stop NASA, you know, and don't stop manned flight either.
A lot of the cast was there when they rolled out the shuttle Enterprise. What was that like?
When they rolled out the Enterprise from behind the hangar, the Air Force started up the Star Trek theme. Man, I swear to you, it just went right here, you know, because of such a marriage of fact and fiction, you know, really just tremendous stab in the heart, you know, made you feel so good.
What about the movies?
Actually, number 6 is really my favorite, and then the ABC version of 2, and then 4.
So what was your favorite Star Trek episode?
My favorite episode, as far as which it wasn't one that I had a nice part in it, but not one of the bigger parts, was because of the suspense in it, and because it was also written in more scientific terms. I thought that the Doomsday Machine was one of our best, and a couple of good writers have told me that they think that was one of the best too. Other people will pick City on the Edge of Forever. And but also one that was the most fun to do, of course, was The Trouble with Tribbles, because we had some comic situations going there, that's a lot of fun.
You appeared on The Next Generation.
I always used to get a laugh, and of course I still do now when I tell the story, but this is in the old days, before I was on the Next Generation, people would ask me at the conventions, wouldn't you want to be on The Next Generation? I said, hell no, I don't want to look that old. Because, DeForest Kelley, he didn't have 1 square centimeter, but he didn't have 5 or 6 wrinkles on it, Hey, that's too long in the chair for me. But Ron Moore actually finally wrote a good story that got me in there, and that was fabulous,
You had fun with that?
Oh, yeah, that was great fun. They just treated me like I was a king,
So is there one message that Star Trek really sends across the world? I mean, it is seen everywhere.
When they used to poke fun at it, I would support the show. I said, because I said, well, you have a lot to learn. That's all. You have a lot to learn, and the way Star Trek is today, it is all over the world. It's in just about every important language in the world. And what shows can say that? Because even Lucy's humor doesn't work in every language, but Star Trek does. I can remember an Indian man from India in the old days. He said that when the series was on the air, he would go back to India for 2 or 3 weeks vacation, and he'd have 50 or 60 children sitting around him at every evening, and he would tell 2 or 3 Star Trek episodes that he had seen, because they didn't have television in India back then, right? And they were all just like, wow. Maybe with everything that's going on here in Bosnia and Somalia and everything else, and Haiti, maybe we shouldn't be governing them, or even letting the United Nations do it, but see, I don't understand at all. I don't understand the Somalis. If they understood why we were there in the first place, that we were there to help you get food because you were not getting food because of your warlords, right? So, to me, I think that they're the people who should have had an uprising.
Yeah. So our government doesn't do a very good job of following the Prime Directive, then, do they?
To me, unfortunately, there are going to have to be people who starve all over the world, and we have organizations that can do their best to get it there. But the point is, and they may fail 90% of the time, but even 10% you're going to help.
So what would you like to be most famous for?
For my ability to work hard, because that has brought me everything that I have ever had. And I tell some actors, and I tell just other people that aren't actors, I said, if you're not working hard enough unless you've lost, 55 hours of sleep. I said, because you're just not working hard enough,
Is there anything about your life you would change at this point?
Well, it's an if and or buts, But if I had not done Scotty, I would have hoped that I would be just famous for an awful lot of different roles that I had played. And, but who knows? You have to go along with what goes in life, you know.
You know, this has been a lot of fun. And before we go, I want to thank Tony Cook, Patrick So, Ken Warren, and the entire observatory staff for helping us out today. I want to thank Jimmy Doohan for taking time out of his busy schedule to talk to us. And most importantly, I want to thank you for watching. I'm Paul Rosa, and I'm looking forward to our next conversation. Pick 2 or 3 of the people on the cast that you would like to say one-liners about, and just give them to me if you will.
Well, I love to hear George Takei laugh. I love to hear Nichelle sing. As a matter of fact, I like to get along and sing along with her, and I love to read Walter's writing, because Walter is a terrific writer, and he has some show that we may be doing. You know, we'll see how that works out. And DeForest Kelley, just to make me feel a little better, I think he's got to eat 10 times as much more chocolate than he does, so that he gets a good-sized waist. You know, his waist is about this, about 18 inches, you know. Mine isn't, of course, is a little over double that size, but, you know, I wish he'd have a little heart, you know, and do something like that for me, you know. Leonard, to me, is just one heck of a guy, and the best director we've ever had.